Have you ever stopped to think about how we know a new medicine is actually safe and effective? I mean, really? No? Well, it all comes down to this huge mountain of data that gets generated in labs during clinical trials. But here's the thing, the reliability of that data and, our safety, it all hinges on a set of invisible rules that control every single step of the process.
All right, so let's get right into it. The story here really starts with a pretty big problem. You see, the two main rulebooks for medical research, I'm talking the ones that are actually law, they somehow managed to leave this huge, kind of dangerous gap right where the labs do all their work.
And this slide, it just lays out the problem perfectly. On one hand, you've got good clinical practice, or GCP. This is all about protecting patients, their rights, their safety, their well-being. And that's fantastic, absolutely crucial, but it's super vague when it comes to what happens in the lab. Then on the other hand, you have good laboratory practice, or GLP. Now this one is incredibly detailed about lab processes, really prescriptive. But here's the catch. It wasn't made for human clinical trial samples. It was designed for testing things like pesticides and cosmetics. So you see the issue? A massive regulatory gap right where some of the most critical data is being generated.
So, what do you do about a gap like that? A really dangerous one? Well, you need a new standard. And importantly, this wasn't going to be a new law. It was a set of practical, hands-on guidelines, something specifically designed to finally build a bridge between the world of patient care and the world of laboratory science.
And that new standard is called Good Clinical Laboratory Practice, or GCLP. Really, the best way to think about it is as a hybrid. It's the best of both worlds. It takes the ethical heart of GCP, that absolute focus on the patient, and it merges it with the super rigorous process-driven brain of GLP. And the goal? It's actually pretty simple. To make sure that the data that comes out of that lab is reliable, top quality, and has total integrity.
Now, GCLP didn't just pop into existence overnight. It evolved over time. A really big moment happened back in 2012 when the European Medicines Agency published this super detailed guidance document. And here's the key part. Even though it wasn't technically a law, it pretty much became the global gold standard. Why? Because it provided all those practical, real-world details that the official regulations were completely missing.
Okay, so what does GCLP actually look like on the ground? How does it work in practice? Well, it all starts by building a really solid foundation for the whole process. And that foundation rests on three pillars: the right place, the right people, and the right paperwork.
First up, the place, the physical lab space. It has to be set up to prevent any kind of mix-ups or contamination. We're talking separate areas for different tasks so nothing gets crossed. Access has to be locked down and secure to protect samples and data. Even the environment, things like temperature and humidity, has to be tightly controlled and monitored. Literally everything is designed with one thing in mind: protecting the integrity of that sample. Next, the people. And here, everyone has a crystal clear role. You've got lab management making sure everyone has what they need. There's an analytical project manager who's in charge of the science. Quality assurance, think of them as the independent watchdog, auditing everything to make sure it's all being done by the book. Then there's the archivist, who's responsible for keeping all that data safe for the long haul. But the most important part? Every single person needs documented training, not just on their technical job, but on the core ethical principles of GCP too. And finally, the paperwork. This is where standard operating procedures, or SOPs, come in. You can basically think of SOPs as the lab's master instruction manual. And I mean everything has an SOP. A detailed step-by-step guide for every single task, from how you log in a new sample to how you clean a piece of equipment. This ensures that every task is done the exact same way every single time, no matter who's doing it. It's all about consistency and quality. All right, so we've got our foundation, the place, the people, and the paperwork. Now let's put it all together and see it in action. We're going to follow the journey of one single clinical trial sample as it makes its way through a GCLP lab. So this whole journey is a super controlled process, right from the start. It all begins with a detailed plan. Then, when the sample actually arrives at the lab, it's securely checked in, given a unique ID, and tracked at every single step. The analysis itself, it's only done using methods that have been proven to give accurate results. And all along the way, there are quality control checks built in to catch any little errors. And then finally, the results are sent back to the trial sponsor in a very specific format that was all agreed on beforehand. And threaded through that entire journey, every single step we just talked about is this one guiding principle from good clinical practice. It's the North Star. Every procedure, every quality check, every single rule exists to uphold this one core idea, that the rights, safety, and well-being of the person in that trial, they come before anything else, before the science, before society's interests, before everything. And that big principle really boils down to 3 absolute non-negotiable rules in the lab. First, subject confidentiality. The lab should never, ever see a patient's name or personal info. The samples are completely anonymized. Second, data integrity. This means the data is recorded accurately and you can't just delete a mistake. If you have to make a change, you cross out the original so it's still readable. Then write the new value with your initials, the date, and why you changed it. This creates a perfect audit trail so nobody can fudge the numbers. And third, informed consent. This is huge. The lab can only do the tests that the patient specifically agreed to. Nothing extra, no just-in-case tests, period.
Okay, so we've looked at the rules, we've followed the process from start to finish, but now let's kind of zoom out for a second and connect all these nitty-gritty details back to the big picture. Why does this incredibly meticulous, often totally invisible system matter so much?
Well, it's because it creates this powerful chain reaction, and it's all built on trust. You see, GCLP makes sure the data is reliable. That reliable data is what directly protects the safety of every person in that trial. And when we can be confident that the data is solid and the participants are safe, that's what builds public trust in the whole system of developing new medicines.
So after all of those complex rules, all the detailed procedures, and the endless, rigorous checks, it really just boils down to one single thing, one goal. You ensure the quality and integrity of the data, because that is how you protect the human being behind that sample. So really, the next time you see a headline about some promising new drug or a medical breakthrough, just remember this. Behind all that excitement is an invisible framework. It's a system of rules and dedicated people working to make sure every single claim is built on an unbreakable foundation of trustworthy data.
And that kind of leaves us with a final thought to chew on. Behind every single medicine we rely on, there's a long, long chain of data. GCLP is one of the strongest, yet most invisible links in that chain. And it just makes you wonder, right? How much trust are we placing in all the other invisible links that we never even get to see?